Hey everyone, welcome to Grove Church Online. My name is Cassie. Here are a few things to remember before we get started.
If this is your first or second time watching, we want to invite you to have the best church at home experience with us today. So go ahead and text the word growth to 97,000 and complete the communication card you received on your device. Take a few minutes to complete it right now. Simply write in your name, address, email, phone number, or as much as you feel comfortable sharing. And be sure to check one of the boxes that say first or second time. First or second timers will also receive a free book and gift in the mail. It's our way of saying thank you and letting you know how excited we are that you joined us.
There are a number of next steps noted on the communication card. If you've been part of the Grove Church for a while and would like to set roots and serve on a team, we love for you to attend Growth Track. This is your next step if you want to become part of the church. Growth Track is a great place to find out who we are and where you fit in. It's generally held every second or third Sunday of the month as a 90-minute catered brunch event with childcare provided. To sign up, simply check the Growth Track box on the communication card or sign up on the app.
If you haven't downloaded our app yet, be sure to download it from the app or Google Play Store. The app is a great tool to submit prayer requests, take sermon notes, listen to archived messages, or our weekly devotionals. We also recommend that you use the app to sign up for events or a growth group.
Hey, thanks again for watching. If you have any questions about anything you heard today, or just want to learn more about Grove Church, be sure to visit sdgrove.org.
I've been strong and I've been broken within a moment. I've been faithful and I've been reckless at every bend. I've held everything together and watched it shatter. And I've stood tall and I have crumbled in the same breath. I have wrestled and I have trembled towards surrender. Fixed my heart again and drifted home again. Counted blessings till I've been desperate to find redemption. But every time I turn around, Lord, you're still there. I was found before I was lost, and I was yours before I was known. You wear the scars for all my mistakes, and that part just wrecks me. Deserve this kind of love. Somehow, this kind of love is who you are. It's a grace I can never add up to be somebody you still want. But somehow, you love me as you find me. Thank you, Lord. Love me as you find me, just as you made me, God. Who am I to think your glory needs my praises? But if this borrowed breath is yours, Lord, take it all. You are faithful and you are gracious, and I'm just thankful. You don't need a single thing, but still you want my heart. And I was found before I was lost, and I kind of love is who you are. It's a grace I can never add up to be somebody you still want. But somehow you love me as you find me. Yes, you do. You love me as you find me. So I receive it, God, I will believe it. You love me as you find me. You made me, you're proud of who I am. You love me as you find me. You have a plan, Jesus, and you love me as I believe it. Your love's too good to leave me here. You love me as you find me. Your love's too good to leave me here. You love me as you find me. Your love's too good to leave me here. You love me as you find me. Your love's too good to leave me here. Sing it. If you want my heart, I won't second guess, 'cause I need your love more than anything. 'Cause I'm in and I'm yours. Your love's too good to leave me here. If you want my heart, I won't second guess, 'cause I need your love more than anything. 'Cause I'm in and I'm yours. Your love's too good to leave me here. Thank you, Lord. If you want my heart, I won't second guess, 'cause I need your love more than anything. And I'm in, I'm yours. Your love's too good to leave me here. God, I'm in, I'm in, I'm in. And I know I don't deserve this kind of love, but somehow give it freely. This kind of love is who you are. It's a grace I can never add up to be somebody you still want. But somehow you love me as you find me. Jesus, you love me as you find me. I raise a hallelujah in the presence of my enemy. I raise a hallelujah louder than the unbelief. I raise a hallelujah. My weapon is a melody. I raise a hallelujah, 'cause heaven comes to fight for me. And I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm, louder and louder. You're gonna hear my praises roar, and up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. I raise a hallelujah with everything inside of me. I raise a hallelujah, and I will watch the darkness flee. I raise a hallelujah in the middle of the mystery, in the middle of the mystery. I raise a hallelujah. Fear, you've lost your hold on me. I'm gonna sing it. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar up from the ashes. Hope will arise. Death is defeated. The King is alive.
Hey, Grove Church family, Pastor John here, and it's that time of our worship service where we worship God by bringing our tithes and our offerings to Him. And you can see in the bottom third the best ways to give. And maybe while you're getting your phone out, let me tell you about some really exciting opportunities. You know, a lot of people have been asking us, hey, how can we help people? What are the financial needs? And I just want to tell you how blessed we are. Through your worship and your faithfulness and giving, worshiping through giving, we've been able to meet all the needs of the families of our church so far. It's been tremendous. But just last week, I connected with a pastor who I meet with every month. There's a group of pastors I meet with for breakfast and prayer every month. My friend Chris came to me just a couple days ago and said, hey, there's a tremendous need, a tremendous opportunity in Baja right now. My friend Chris has been networking with about 540 churches all up and down Baja, and for another purpose, but it's just been God's divine timing that we were able to meet this need in this season of their need. So here's the need. Food. You know, a lot of people down there are not working, and even some of the pastors are struggling because to get food. And so we want to come alongside our brothers and sisters in Christ and provide food. Now, I've got another friend, Robert Herbert from All Peoples, who also belongs to that prayer group, breakfast prayer group. I said, Robert, he was just bragging about what a great experience it was, and I got him privately and said, Robert, was it really that good? He said, yes. I said, would you do it again? He said, absolutely. So here's what we want to do. We want to gather as much money as we can, and we want to help put packages of the food packages together, and we want to help deliver this food to these churches. And this is why I'm so excited about it. It's to these networks of pastors. There's leaders in place, pastors in place who know the best way to leverage this food for the greatest good for Jesus. They know their people, they know what's going on in their communities. And so there's 3 ways you can get involved. The first thing is, I was talking to Chris, he said, we're hoping to get $20,000 to $30,000 so that we can get 3,000 bags of food for 3,000 families. And these bags of food are bought in Mexico and assembled in TJ, and it's much cheaper. For $10.50, they can feed a family for a week and a half. So I want to encourage you to give. That's the first thing. The second thing is, some of you might actually want to go down to TJ and put these bags together. And thirdly, you might even want to go, when it's time to deliver these, go down to Baja and deliver these to the churches and the pastors down there. So if you're interested in that, I'd love you to text attend to 97,000 and just answer a couple quick questions. Mark and Nancy Matthews will get a hold of you and tell you how you can get involved down there. But the biggest need is just to give. And you can do that easily when you go on the app or online. You just make sure you click where it says to give, that you click one down and it select Baja Church Food Ministry. Baja Church Food Ministry. And I want you to do that. And I also want to encourage you and remind you, this needs to be above your regular giving, because all the ministry and all the impact we're doing is not going to stop just because we're helping them down, our brothers and sisters. Guys, what a great opportunity. We are so blessed to get to do this. I'm so excited about it. Would you just pray with me real quick and let's do this. Lord, we bless you. We honor you. We love you. We thank you that you've given us so much, and we want to bless our brothers and sisters in Baja. Lord, they are working hard to get the good news about your son Jesus to the community they're in. Lord, would you use this money that they might know you and make you known? Would you bless our efforts? And would you just, Lord, we'd love to be part of that 20 or 30,000. That would be awesome. If we could get that and put a semi-truck together and go down there, we would love that. So would you help us? And we ask this in the strong name of Jesus. Amen. God bless you guys.
Hello and welcome to Grove Church. It is AJ and Colton, and we're so glad you're here. We have some exciting news to tell you. Why don't you start?
Yeah, the first thing I want to tell you about is Adopt a Graduate. So if you go on Facebook and search Adopt a Graduate /Grove, you'll find our Facebook group. What you can do there is 3 things. You can share that group with others so they can nominate a graduate. You can nominate your own person you know is graduating, or you can choose one from the list to support through their graduation.
Yeah, sweet. So make sure you go on Facebook and do that. Also, follow us on Facebook and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps us grow the channel. You're probably watching it on YouTube right now. Just click that little button and it'll help us get the good news of the gospel to as many people as possible. Also, tonight, if you're watching on Sunday, we are, for the first time in a long time, actually opening up the Grove Church building. We're going to have a prayer and worship night. I'm so tired of just seeing Colton's face.
No, he's not.
I'm so excited to see some of your guys's. So come every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday for the next 3 weeks. And again, Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30, we're going to have prayer and worship nights. So again, just to say it, to be super clear, for the next 3 weeks, on Sunday nights, Tuesday nights, and Thursday nights at 6:30, we're going to have prayer and worship nights.
Yeah, it's going to be so awesome. And there are some guidelines we're going to be following. So here's what you can expect. At the door, there's going to be a screening just to ask if you've been sick, had a temperature, anything like that. You'll have to wear a mask when you enter the building until you get to your seat. Then you're able to take your mask off if you want to. And we'll be practicing social distancing by staying 6 feet apart. And some of you guys may be wondering, like, what does that look like? That's crazy. But we can guarantee you it won't be as bad as what happens to poor AJ in this video.
Check out this video.
Oh, hey, good morning, man. Just 1 sec. Turn. Have a great Sunday. AJ, dude, what's up? How you been?
Good to see you.
Good. Can I get you some coffee?
Yeah, I'll take a coffee. That sounds great.
You got it. Get you a nice clean cup right here. Oh, this will be good, man.
Yeah.
Fill her up. Here we go. Some nice piping hot coffee. One sec.
Oh,
There we go.
is this stuff, what's in there?
Oh, it's just standard. Here we go, buddy. Here we go.
Okay.
Here we go. Some nice hot coffee. Oh! Dude, it's so good to see you. Happy Sunday.
Morning.
Hey, dude.
How you doing?
I'm so good.
Oh, yeah.
So good to see you. There you go,
Thanks.
man. How's Maddie?
She's doing well.
Oh, yeah?
Doing well.
Good. How's Aubrey?
Good, yeah.
Okay.
Staying healthy.
Good. That's so glad to hear, man.
Yeah.
So good to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, it's great to be back at church. Oh, offering basket. Man, I missed you.
Oh, thanks. I can't see.
Hey Grove, it is Colton Poore, and I am the Junior High and Connections Director here at the Grove Church, and it is my pleasure and honor to be able to speak with you today. So I'm going to be talking on something that is near and dear to my heart. It is the third part of our How to Church series called Serving, and we have service through social distancing. So you probably saw a video that was a little funny, but kind of played on the point that serving looks different, if we can even do it at all nowadays, because we're in this season of social distancing, of quarantine, and it's hard to reach out and help other people. And it's super interesting how the three things that we talked about, we got feedback from you that those were the three things you were missing: worship, community, and service. And I think the reason that was is because all three of those things, Caleb said it, John said it, now I'm gonna say it, were things we were created to do. They were part of why we were put on earth, to worship, to be in community with Jesus and with others, and to serve. And so I like to start off with stories, so I'm gonna tell you a story of when my life took a turn as a Christian because of service. And it starts with 20-year-old Colton back in the day, I know, a little youngster, and I was about to go to a home group with a friend of mine called Nathan Cornett. That's weird. I call him that, but whatever. I'm with Nathan Cornett, and he was a guy that I admired and looked up to, and I saw him living a life of faith, working at a church, and it was a way that I wanted my life to go in a certain direction. And so, little tidbit of wisdom, if you see someone living a way you want to live, hang out with them. So that was my thought. So I started going to Nathan Cornett's home group, and it was really good. I learned a lot. I got poured into, invested in, but there was one thing that was kind of a blessing and a curse. Because Nathan was in a different phase of life than me, like I said, so he was able to train me how to move to that spot. But he was also, how do I say this in like a nice way? They were just old. You know, like they were just like old and past my phase of life. And so they're talking about like how to balance their mortgage and like all this stuff. And I'm like, I had Taco Bell 4 times this week, so my stomach hurts. Like, so can you pray for that? And they're like, sure, whatever. And so I was at this point where I was going and attending, and it was really good, but I was thinking about leaving, and not leaving the church, but leaving to another home group. And all that changed when Nathan asked me a simple question. One week he said, does anyone lead worship? And I had led worship at school and high school a couple times. I played guitar and sung. It wasn't something I really saw my life moving into, but I had done it a couple times, and I felt God tell me, say yes, say yes. So I said yes to leading worship at home group. And Nathan had me come over before home group that night, and it was basically like a tryout. Looking back now, I thought he said he wanted to practice, but he was just like judging and seeing if I could do it. But we went to a room and we played a song, and it went well, I guess, because he let me lead worship that night at home group. But from that moment on, my life changed from being just a member of that home group to actively being a disciple and pushing God's kingdom forward through it. And that's what service does, is it takes us from just attending church, it takes us from watching services into being an active disciple of Jesus and moving his agenda forward, being a worker for Jesus. And we were created to do that. And I think that's why you guys brought those things up. And if you don't believe me, I have proof. In Mark 10:45, Jesus says this to his disciples after they're bickering about who will sit on the left and right-hand side of him. He says, "For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." All right, so if it's good enough for Jesus to come to serve others, it better be good enough for us. And we better put that as a priority in our lives because God did, because Jesus did. Okay, and then in Ephesians 2:10, Paul says this, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. So don't hear what I'm not saying. Paul says before this verse that good works do not save us. All right, salvation is the first step of being a Christian. But, and here's how my mind works. Follow me with this for a second. Have you ever wondered that when you accept Jesus into your life, when you realize that you are a sinner, you need a savior, and that is Jesus, and you accept him into your heart, you pray that prayer, and you become a follower of Jesus, you don't just get like zapped right up to heaven? Have you ever thought about that? Right? I don't know if it'd be like a Star Trek thing where it's like, beam me up, Jesus.
Ready to beam up, Jim.
Energizing.
We like go up, or it's like, he goes old school and a chariot of fire comes down, like picks us up, like, woo, right? Go up to heaven, and Jesus is like, yeah, man, you did it. You finished the race, okay? You accepted me, you got it. Let's go to heaven. Maybe it's because we have something to do here. We have something that God wants us to do, to serve, to complete works on earth. And you guys know if you've accepted Jesus, that that's just the beginning of what he wants for us. And so we were created to serve. It's part of our purpose. And you guys may know this, but if you take away something that someone was created to do, bad things happen, right? And I think we're seeing that right now as we have this hole in our heart that we're longing to help others, that we're longing to serve the church, we're longing to push God's agenda forward. And there's stats that talk about this, right? And this is a little just tidbit. They did studies talking about if you just take away a person's job, so unemployment, if you take away the thing that they do, they have an asymmetrical effect on suicide rates. And they did studies in 1974, 2001, and 2012 that all proved this. And what that means is that it's important. What I'm trying to impress is that serving is not just something that we want to do, not something we should do, but it's something we need to do. It's important in our relationship with God. And those were just jobs, all right? They might have not even liked their job. But when you take that away, something that someone's supposed to do, you get confusion, you get loss, and you get low, right? So God has something for us to do. And what's awesome is we're going to be going through the story of Esther. So I hope you see how important serving is. But now, how do we do that today? How do we do that today? And I think the story of Esther, which we're going to be looking at, is perfect because she found herself in a situation where it wasn't easy to do the task that God had put for her. Her mission was not easy. So the story of Esther, a little background because we're not going to be able to read the whole thing, but I really encourage you after this, if you're looking for a book of the Bible to read Esther. It's so good and it's so rich and it's such a great story. But what happens is, so Esther grows up in the Persian kingdom, all right? And King Ahasuerus is ruling over the kingdom. And so we have four characters that we need to know about in this story. First is King Ahasuerus. He's the king of Persia. He can basically do whatever he wants, all right? And Persia was massive. It went from Egypt, little parts of Greece, all the way over to India. So they were huge. They took over as the superpower in the world at this time. And then the second character is Queen Esther. Okay, so King Ahasuerus gets rid of Vashti. She doesn't show up to a party. And he's like, that's one too many, you're done, all right? And then he gets all the beautiful women lined up and he gets to pick Esther. Some of you single guys are like, yeah, why don't we still do dating like that? Sorry, you have to figure it out like the rest of us, all right? But Queen Esther, she is married to King Ahasuerus. And then we have Haman, okay? Now, Haman is the villain. He's the evil dude, and he hates the Jews. Esther is a Jew, okay? And we'll go into why he hates the Jews, but he is the king's right-hand man, so he has the king's ear. And then Mordecai, the fourth and final character we need to know about. Mordecai is Esther's uncle. Now, it says that Mordecai brought in Esther as his own daughter. We don't know what happened to her parents, but basically he raised Esther, and they're super tight. Both Jews. Haman hates the Jews. Married to King Ahasuerus, Esther is uncle. Like, they're all interconnected. It's so cool. Okay, so those are the characters. And what we need to know before we jump into it in chapter 4 is that Haman, he runs into Mordecai. And Mordecai does not bow, does not pay homage to Haman. And Haman is a selfish dude. He is self-serving throughout the whole book, even when it comes to the king, who he's supposed to be advising. And he runs into Mordecai and he gets mad. And he finds out that he's a Jew and he starts this plot to completely wipe out the Jews. Now, what was interesting is how the Persians took over so much area and territory is when they conquered a city or a nation or whatever, they would let them continue life pretty much as usual. They'd let them worship their gods. They'd let them do their work. They'd let them go to their temples. But what they would do is they'd set up a governor, or they called them satraps, in that area to make sure that the money was going to the king and that there was no revolts or anything. But other than that, they let them kind of be themselves. And so they didn't try and push back. They let the Persians take over. They felt safe with their armies there. It was a really good system. So Mordecai was allowed to worship God. He was allowed to not bow before Haman because that was what he believed in. But Haman didn't like it. And so he creates a plot and he gets the king to sign off on it that on a certain day, they're going to completely wipe out the Jews because they don't follow the religion of the Persians, and he says that they revolt against them. So that's where we're at. And Mordecai finds out about this plot, and he goes to Esther. He says, Esther, you got to talk to the king. You have to talk to the king because if you don't, our entire people are going to get wiped out. And so we're going to pick this up in Esther 4, verses 13 through 14. Okay, now Esther talks to Mordecai before this, and she says, Mordecai, if I go before the king, he could kill me. If you are not summoned before the king without him asking for you, you have the right to be killed. All right? But what he could do is he could hold out his golden scepter and then listen to what they had to say. So that's what Esther tells Mordecai, and then Mordecai says this to Esther, and it's so good. Verse 13, then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, do not think to yourself that the king's palace will let you escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Okay, so Esther has something before her that she could do, that she could serve the Jewish people literally the biggest way possible, keeping them being wiped off the face of the earth, all right? And Mordecai says this when she's a little scared. He says, deliverance will come. It just won't be from you. And so the first point is God's work is going to get done. We just have to decide if we want to be a part of it. Man, and that is so good because God is going to do what he's going to do. He is going to protect his people. And there are people out there right now who have lost jobs, who their family members are sick, who are hurting, who maybe are just in an apartment for a month and a half by themselves and are lonely. And God, if you're one of those people, he sees you, first of all. He's going to help you, second of all. And hopefully, third of all, if we're not in that position, we need to be a part of what God is going to do. We need to step in and serve those other people. And it's funny, I have this friend, and I feel like we do this with God sometimes, and I'll equate it in here in a second, but I have this friend who always is coming back to me and like, dude, I knew Tesla was going to be a huge company before it was a huge company. Have you ever heard of Spotify? He's like, yeah, I was listening to Spotify before anyone was listening to Spotify. If I had just invested in Spotify like a half a year ago, like I would be a billionaire right now. And my question to him always, and he says about everything, it's like Apple, Tesla, Spotify, McDonald's, whatever. It's like, dude, you weren't even alive when they were a big thing. But I say to him, why didn't you? He's like, oh, I don't know. You know, he has the excuses or whatever. And I feel like we sometimes do that with God because we know he's going to do something. And we say, man, I knew God was going to do something through my church. I knew God was going to do something in my community. I knew God was going to revive this area. And then my question is, were you a part of it? Right? Because if we know what God is going to do, we just have to decide if we want to be a part of it. And that is where Esther is right now. And I love that verse of what Mordecai says. And so we are going to go into the second point of how Esther handles serving. All right, so Esther is in a position where she needs to realize that if she goes to the king, she could lose her life. But she knows that God has put her in this position to save his people. So let's pick up our story. Esther says yes to Mordecai, and he asks him to go pray and ask all the Jews to pray for what she's about to do. And we're going to pick up the story in Esther 5, verses 1 through 2. So on the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace in front of the king's quarters, while the king was sitting on his royal throne inside the throne room opposite entrance to the palace. So let's stop there for a second. So Esther is about to go in front of the king. She knows that this could cost her life. She has decided that it is worth it anyways. And I can't imagine how she feels. Like we serve and do little things here and there, but have we ever been in a position where we need to wager our life for helping others? And let's see what happens. And in verse 2, and when the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, she won favor in his sight. And he held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. And then Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. So that means that the king accepted Esther coming without being invited and that now she could speak. And so the second point is that service will cost you something. All right, service will cost you something. And you might be wondering why we're in the kids' church room here in the nursery, because I think it's fitting, because if you've ever served in youth ministry or with little kids, you know that serving costs you something. You might get spit up on, pooped on, pinched, pulled, I don't know. In youth ministry, like junior high, they're hopefully over that whole phase. Some of them not, they pinch a little bit. But it costs you like Frappuccino money or like driving and your time. High school, you go hang out with students, buy them a coffee. Service costs you something. And wherever you serve, and the cost varies. It's not saying that one thing is better than the other because you spend more money doing it or because you give up more time doing it. But the value of something is determined by how much we're willing to give up for it, right? If you get something for free, the value is free, right? It's easy to let go of that. It doesn't have a lot of value, but if you put your heart and soul and money and time into something, it costs, and service will cost you something. And the reason that's important is because we need to count the cost before we jump into something. I feel like a lot of us rush into serving because we feel like we should, and then it's a shock because we didn't expect to have to give up what we were going to give up. And I think about counting the costs, right? And you know this, if someone in front of you at the grocery store is like getting a coupon item and it's supposed to be free, it could ring out for $1 and all hell breaks loose, right? Like, that's supposed to be free. Okay, the cost was counted incorrectly. And sometimes I feel like we do that with service. We show up and it expects more of us than we're willing to give, and we fall out. I remember a time when I was dating Annie and we went to Jamba Juice, and I forgot to count the cost of depositing a check into my account, and I went to pay for the Jamba Juice, and I got the dreaded error, card declined, right? And we were in an air-conditioned Jamba Juice, and it felt like it's 10,000 degrees in there, right? And I don't know if you guys have felt this at a restaurant when your card gets declined. You're like, the checking account and the savings needs to get balanced. Just try it again, right? And you're just sweating bullets because we know that the cost maybe wasn't counted correctly. And Luke talks about this too. He says, "For which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he's laid a foundation and is not able to finish it, all who see begin to mock him, saying, 'This man began to build and was not able to finish.'" Man, let's not be that guy, right? Service is going to cost you. If you want to be a part of what Jesus is doing, it will cost, and we need to accept that and count them before we can step into what God has for us. So, Esther gets to speak with King Ahasuerus, and she lays her plan in motion to save the Jews. Okay, so she invites him and Haman to a banquet where she is going to plead with the king to revoke his orders to save her people. And up to this point, King Ahasuerus doesn't even know that Esther is a Jew, all right, because Mordecai told her to keep it secret so that he wouldn't judge her or he wouldn't hold that against her. And so he doesn't know. He doesn't know that he has literally written a death sentence for his wife, who has found favor in his eyes. So she gets to talk with him. She counts the cost. She knows that she's going to move forward with this plan, and they go to this banquet. And here's what's going to happen. We haven't heard from our buddy Haman in a while, right? The villain. But like I said, we don't have time to go through this whole story, but it's so good. Like Mordecai and Haman get in this weird fight, and then Haman thinks he's about to be honored, but he's actually talking about Mordecai, and the king gives him a horse, and Haman has to lead him around on it. So good. Okay, so Haman's pissed at this point, but he's still going forward with his plan. He actually builds a gallows to hang Mordecai on because he's upset about him being alive, and that's whatever. Okay, so we haven't heard from Haman, but what happens, we're going to skip over this part, is that they come to the banquet, and they're hanging out, they're eating, they're having fun, and Haman's enjoying it. He's just looking forward to when his plan will be enacted. And Esther comes forward, and she talks to the king, and she says, "If I found favor with you, I need you. Why would you kill my people?" And he says, "What? Why would I kill your people? Why would I kill you?" And she reveals that she's a Jew, and she reveals Haman's plot to wipe them out. And Haman gets what's coming to him, all right? So he dies. He ends up on the gallows that he built for Mordecai. The king is like, "Haman, you're evil." Boom, villain gets what he deserves, how all good stories should be, right? So we come to this point, though, where it seems like Esther and Mordecai have won. Their mission is complete. They've gotten rid of Haman. The decree should be done. They should have saved their people, but they run into something. And they had to decide if they were concerned about saving the Jews or if they were committed to saving the Jews. Because I don't know about you, but my plans don't usually go according to plan the first try. And so we need to figure out different ways to make it happen. And so we're going to pick up the story in Esther 8, verse 5, and we're going to read a couple verses here, but they're so good. And so this is after they got rid of Haman and things looking like they should be fixed. And Esther says to King Ahasuerus, she said, if it pleases the king and I have found favor in your sight, and if the thing seems right before the king, and I'm pleasing in his eyes, she likes to say that, just make sure everything's all good, let an order be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, which he wrote to destroy the Jews who are in the provinces of the king. For how can I bear to see the calamity that's coming from my people? How can I bear to see the destruction of my kindred? Okay, so she pleads with the king like, hey, let's erase this. We got rid of Haman. Let's erase this. Let's finish the job. And this is what King Ahasuerus says. King Ahasuerus says to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the gallows because he intended to lay hands on the Jews. And you may write as you please with regard to the Jews in the name of the king and seal it with the king's ring. But an edict written in the name of the king and sealed with the king's ring cannot be revoked. So the king says to Esther, hey, I am with you. I wish I never wrote that, but I can't stop it. I can't stop it. And Esther's mission gets blocked. And the third point that we need to learn from the story of Esther, who's serving her people, is when our mission is blocked, we can't give it up. We just have to adapt our method. And it's so good what they do to figure this out. So the king gave them an option. He's like, hey, I can't stop it, but you can write whatever you want to the Jews. And so they figure it out and they think and they say, what if we write to all the Jews and say, you don't have to just sit there and be slaughtered. You can pick up weapons and you can fight. You can fight back against this and you can save yourselves. And so that's what they do. They pivot, they adapt, they change. And that is what we are facing right now. Right? There's a lot of ways, and we're sitting here in the growth track room because it's something we face as a church. We used to meet in this room and have crepes, so good, right? And hang out and talk and meet each other. And that was our process to get you involved in church, engaged as a member, right? But our mission hasn't changed, but the way we do it is going to have to. Right? And we're not giving up getting you guys involved in the church, going from someone who shows up on Sundays to someone who is moving God's kingdom forward through the Grove. Right? We're not giving up on that. We're adapting how we're going to do that. And it's really exciting. I can't go into it now, but it's going to be awesome. But that's exactly what Esther and Mordecai do. And it's about moving forward the best way we can with what we have and what we've been given, adapting our methods. So they write those letters, and I'll just finish off the story just in broad strokes. Seriously, go back and read it. It's amazing. Okay, it's better than anything on Netflix, promise. But they write the letters. The Jews, they pick up arms, and they fight back. And the people, they lose heart. They're like, whoa, these guys are crazy, right? They have God on their side. And like they thought it was going to be easy pickings, but now it's not. And the Jews are saved because of what Esther and Mordecai did. And that's how the story ends. But guys, when our mission is blocked, we need to adapt our method. And so that's all good, right? But I want to give you some actionable items and ways to move forward with this. Because hopefully through this message, you realize that serving is important, right? It's something God calls us to do and we're created to do. And you guys are feeling it just as much as I am, that it's something we need and we need to be a part of. And so there's some really cool things we're doing as a Grove Church that you can get involved in any capacity. One of them is called Adopt a Grad. So there are a lot of students who are out there who had the coolest moment of their life probably up to this point. They'll probably have other good ones. We'll see. Some of them maybe not. But where they're graduating high school, they're graduating college, they're graduating junior high and moving up, and those parties, those people that they get to see got taken away. Okay, so we started something called Adopt a Grad, and you can find the group on Facebook. And if you have resources, you can adopt a graduate yourself and get them things that they need for graduation. Maybe bless them with some money or some clothes if they're off to college, I don't know. Or if you don't, you can just share the post. You can just share it on Facebook. That's easy, right? That will cost you a little bit. For me, it would cost me like an hour of figuring out how to do that, but I have friends that will help me with that. But you can nominate graduates, right? It may not cost a lot, but you can do it. We are doing this something that's so cool too, is the Mexico Mission food donation. So I don't know if you guys know, but I've been making phone calls and talking to people, and it seems like most people in our community are doing okay, but that's not the situation all over the place. There's a cry for help from Mexico saying that we are literally out of food. And we don't know how to get it. We have no money, no work to go buy food. People are starving, literally. I've never seen that before in my life, but there are people starving so close to us that need help, right? And God's gonna do something for them. God is not gonna forget about them. So we need to decide if we wanna be a part of it. And there's 3 things you can do, all right? You could just donate. If you have food to donate or money that you could give to help support them and feed hungry people, do it. If you don't, you could help drive people. The second level, you could drive people down to Mexico to take those baskets down there, give them food. Or the third one, if you have time and you feel comfortable being in Mexico, and Mark and Nancy are heading up a team that are gonna go down there and feed hungry people. Man, I can't think of a better way to spread God's love and let them know that we care about them and meet a need and serve others than doing that. Right? Feeding the hungry. So we're gonna have ways for you to get involved in that coming up too. And the last one, if you're like, man, I can't drive, I have no money, I don't have Facebook, like, I don't know, you can be calling people, right? If you have a voice and a phone, call people at the church, and you can start to meet with people now too. Like I went and walked around Lake Murray with some friends. We stayed the distance apart and we walked and we talked, and there are people that are lonely, that need community, that are hurting, right? And we can do that. We can do that. You don't need to have these amazing superhuman abilities to make a superhuman difference in someone's life, right? So those are 3 things: adopt a graduate, Mexico missions, food donation. And if you can't do those, just make some phone calls. Show people you care about them, love them. And so, man, the book of Esther is so good, and I think she lived in unprecedented times, just like maybe we are right now. And there's ways that we can serve. There's ways that we can move God's kingdom forward, even if it wasn't the way we thought originally. So that's it for me. Really appreciate you guys listening, and I'll see you next time.